Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. A culture is a living, breathing thing. It has to be, because culture means the way that a particular group of people does things. But not everything is expedient, so you can't say that anything goes, and a culture will go into decline for a variety of reasons, but the main reason is internal decay, and that's due to a loss of critical values. Take a look at Billy Dee Williams. Now, this man was, for a long while, the archetype of black male virility. Cool, smart, a ladies' man, never raised his voice. He didn't have to because he commanded attention merely by just being there. Billy Dee never played the fool for anyone. And this is not to say that Billy Dee was some sort of exceptional example. He wasn't. In fact, he was par for the course, but the point was he was the kind of example that everybody could agree on. Billy Dee was recognized across the board by black people as being an archetype of black virility. This is a representation of black masculinity. And that's the reason why Billy Dee Williams was and is respected, not just by black people, but by people outside the community, because of the fact that Billy Dee Williams was in fact an invention of the black community. Billy Dee Williams was not an invention of the white media. You see, a big part of masculinity, a big part of manhood is you got to have parameters. You have to have limits that you don't go beyond. There have to be boundaries, not merely in terms of what it is that you're not going to do, but also in terms of what you're not going to accept from other people. There have to be red lines. That's a critical part of virility as well. And for many years, Billy Dee Williams has been understood to be an example of black manhood and masculinity, a symbol of that principle. But it just goes to show how very far things have come, and not necessarily in a good direction, when you have somebody who is loud, obstreperous, somebody who makes it a point that they're going to do anything that they can to get someone to look at them, basically be like cheap wine, Billy Porter. He's the exact opposite of everything that Billy Dee Williams is. He's not cool, he's not smart, he's always screaming like a hood rat at the customer service desk of Walmart. Rare is the occasion that he doesn't belt out a "Yas, Queen!" This guy plays the fool at the drop of a hat, even if no one's looking. He'll make a moderate buffoon of himself simply because it's a day that ends in a Y. Billy Dee Williams was all about self-assurance. Billy Porter is all about codependence. Now, and I promise you, we're not going to be delving into Simpgate again. That's basically peripheral to this discussion, but Billy Porter was asked for his opinion for whatever the hell reason, I guess because it was slow week, but he was asked for his opinion on the whole Simpgate, Slapgate thing, and while he didn't have anything intelligent to say about any of the people who were involved, nonetheless, Billy Porter did decide that he had to say something about masculinity. He definitely had to say something about that.
You also were at the Oscars. The ban has been handed down on Will. Your thoughts on that?
It's a really rough one for me. It's a really rough one for me, because I don't know that I have the authority to speak on it. But as a black queer man who has been dragged through the mud for not being masculine enough in this world, being called the cause of the emasculation of the black man because I decide to play with feminine silhouettes in my clothing. It's really disheartening that the version of masculinity shows up like that. It's upsetting. It's upsetting. And I will be the black queen that I am. Because if that is the representation of what masculinity is supposed to be, I don't need it.
Now, you hear what Porter said. I don't know that I have the authority to speak on it. Well, in that case, it seems obvious you shouldn't be speaking now, don't it? But he's an empty-headed blabbermouth, so of course his diarrhea of the mouth would spew all over the place. He didn't have any support to give to Jada, not surprisingly, and yet he didn't have anything to say about anybody else, but he made it all about himself. Somehow, somebody's asking you, what do you think about Will Smith slapping Chris Rock? And somehow Billy Porter decides it's all about himself. But it's what in particular that he decided he wanted to gripe about that was interesting. He said that as a black queer man who has been dragged through the mud for not being masculine enough in this world, or for being the cause of the emasculation of the black man because I decided to play with feminine silhouette in my clothing, it's really disheartening that version of masculinity shows up like that. Well, first of all, little Billy, you have no power. Nobody blames you for emasculating black men's image. We recognize that you're a pawn, a puppet for the white media. It is the white media who's trying to emasculate black men. You're merely their mascot. You only exist because they decided to make you a thing. Billy Porter has no talents, no abilities, no skills. He's the literal definition of famous for nothing. Billy Porter, you really need to get over yourself. You don't have the ability to emasculate black men. You're just the designated scarecrow for the white media who's trying to do that. The only reason that Billy Porter even appears, even in some online headline or what have you, is because the white media wants him there. They know in advance exactly what his spiel is going to be, no matter what the subject is. They have to give him some busy work just so that the guy can pretend to be relevant, or so they can pretend that he is. But of course, the topper was when he said, "I will be the black queen that I am, because if that is the representation of what masculinity is supposed to be, I don't need it." So you have a black male in front of the cameras declaring he's a queen because of toxic masculinity. But that is the point, isn't it? I and others have said that what Will Smith did was a lot of things, but the one thing you can't call it was a display of masculinity. I and others called it out for the weak display of beta male femininity that it was. But here's the twist. Billy Porter is no paragon of masculinity either. He in particular shouldn't be speaking on this. He should be talking about his choice of fashion and what kind of cleaning products he prefers. Billy Porter said nothing about Will Smith, Chris Rock, or Jada Pinkett. Instead, he turned it into an attack on toxic black masculinity. And a chance to say that all the people who say that he emasculates black men's image, oh, there's something wrong with these people. He simultaneously suffers from delusions of persecution and delusions of grandeur. And yet, this is who the white media is going to put a microphone in front of the face of, and they're going to be giving him a platform so he can sound off on this, which they would never do under any other circumstances, especially not if it was white people they were talking about. You got a lot of white celebrities who are in dire straits right now. Johnny Depp, for example. He and Amber Heard, his ex-bop, girlfriend, whatever, they've been suing each other for years now. And yet nobody is running up in Caitlyn Jenner's face, sticking a microphone in Caitlyn Jenner's face and asking for the opinion on any of this. Caitlyn Jenner is never given a spotlight for the purpose of indicting white celebrities as a justification to reject masculinity. Nobody's shoving a microphone into the face of Ethan Page, formerly known as Ellen Page, and trying to get a soundbite on that one. You see, when it happens to be white people, white figures in the LGBT community that the white media talks to, just using Caitlyn Jenner as an example, Jenner is presented solely as a symbol of the normalization of trans people, not as some sort of voice of moral authority. You would never see Caitlyn Jenner using any strife among two white people as some sort of springboard to be able to say, because of all the people who think that I emasculate the image of white men, that would never happen. Even if it did, the white media sure as heck wouldn't be publicizing it. And Billy Porter is not about to be going on some sort of crusade against anti-black racism in the LGBT community. The white media certainly wouldn't give him a platform for that, not that he would be striving to get one. But we need to understand that culture is a living, breathing thing. And like any living, breathing thing, it can be influenced. But what matters is who is doing the influencing. If you have somebody who understands that part of being a black man happens to be that there are things you don't do, you don't go putting on a show for the white media, calling yourself attacking the black community simply because somebody put a microphone in your face. One of the hallmarks of masculinity is restraint. Not surprisingly, Billy Porter, he also has tons of restraint, but not where black people and especially black men are concerned. When it comes to the black community, particularly heterosexual black men, why, Billy Porter, he doesn't hold his tongue for anything. But, just like Lee Daniels, who, by the way, he didn't need to get told more than once by Sean Penn, you better keep my name out of your mouth. Whenever these guys called themselves running afoul of the dominant society, all of a sudden they learn how to check their mouths. Yeah, they know exactly what the rules are. So it's rather sad that in only 4 short decades, just in 2 generations, we went from the sterling, cool, calm, controlled, austere paradigm of Billy Dee Williams to the buffoonish, idiotic, asinine, loud, moronic depths of Billy Porter. But we didn't get here by ourselves. We got here because there was a white media that wanted to see this and used their overwhelming resources to bring it into being. Because Billy Porter is merely a symptom of a far larger, far greater malady that the white media has been inflicting on us. For the most part, the examples of what's supposed to qualify as an example of black manhood or black womanhood has been served to us by a white media that tries to tell us that Jay-Z is an example of black manhood. Meanwhile, he's doing everything he can to be smiling up in the face of as many white power brokers as he can. But we're supposed to otherwise accept that because, at the very least, he's not making a complete and thorough asinine fool of himself like Billy Porter. Well, I'm here to tell you that as far as I'm concerned, those two are distinctions without a difference. Because Jay-Z defending the business machinations of the NFL is no different and no better than Billy Porter using any opportunity that he gets to take cheap shots at black masculinity. Of course, the white media is not going to be defending Billy Porter's verbal vomit. The white media's goal is not to defend the self-hating anti-black gibberish that Billy Porter spouts. The point is just to get it out there. A large part of black empowerment is living on our own terms, and that means defining ourselves for ourselves. Because if a self-hating, obnoxious, deliberately buffoonish fool is supposed to be the representation of what black masculinity is supposed to be, we don't need that. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Chaz, Eddie Newsom, Kevin Bryant, Mad Hatter, and Racer Bo. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.